Selfish bitch, Brett muttered under his breath. More? Asked the pretty waitress, emphasizing her question by raising the coffee pot in her hand. Brett looked at his watch. No, I have to go. He took the last sip of what was left in his cup, left $2 on the table, paid the bill, and left. He had an appointment with Terry, his soon-to-be ex-wife. A selfish bitch. He could not believe that she considered herself entitled to lay claim to the Continental. It took him more than 2 years to restore it. Sure, she helped a little, but that car was his from the moment he saw it. This was his child, his pride and joy, and now she wanted to take her away from him. Selfish bitch. When he pulled up to his old home, he was a little surprised to see that she hadn't put the house up for sale yet. They didn't live there long enough to accumulate any real capital, maybe 10 or 15,000. But neither of them wanted to continue living there, so they decided to sell the house and split the profits. Everything was very civilized. In fact, Brett and Terry's divorce was about as civil as it gets, except for the car. It was a 1960 Continental Mark V town car. Brett saw it in the backyard of an old farmhouse while driving through Indiana one day. It was exactly the same as the one his father had when he was a child. He didn't usually like classic cars, but there was something about this car. Brett stopped to talk to the farmer. He told the white-haired old man in overalls and a bib that he would be happy to remove this old car from the site for free. But the farmer was not stupid. He knew full well that the car was worth several $1,000s, even in the condition in which it was. They conferred and finally came to a figure they both agreed on. But before Brett could spend that kind of money, he would have to talk to his wife. "What do you know about restoring old cars?" she asked. "Nothing, but I can learn," he replied. They discussed it for several days, but Terry was not convinced. It was a lot of money, but if he lost interest in the old car, what then? Will they be able to sell it and get their money back, or will it just sit rusting in a farmer's backyard? Brett had already done some research and assured her that there was no way they were going to lose the money. Even if he doesn't do anything about it, he can sell the car in its current condition for more than they paid. In the end, it was her husband's enthusiasm that was the deciding factor. With his wife's blessing, Brett arranged for the car to be delivered. A week later, when Terry saw her being unloaded from the ship, she began to have doubts. But it was too late. They were the proud owners of an old, rusty pile of scrap metal. "I know she doesn't look great right now, honey, but I'm going to bring her back to life. I'm going to make her young again," he said with a wide grin. Terry always believed in her husband. In her opinion, there was little he could do if he put in the effort, so she immediately decided that she would support and help him in any way she could. Of course, this was many years ago. The Continental now represented the proverbial line drawn in the sand of a failed marriage. "Selfish bitch," he grumbled to himself as he got out of the car and headed towards the house. He felt a little strange. This was the first time he had been back since he left almost 5 months ago. As he walked up the flat stone steps leading to the porch, he felt a sense of sadness. He and Terry tried so hard to get them out there properly. Oh, he knew divorce was best for both of them. Terry felt the same. Hell, it was the only thing they both agreed on in years. However, they had many wonderful years together. Brett was just raising his hand to knock when the front door opened. He had almost forgotten how beautiful she was. "Hey, Brett, come in," she smiled, stepping aside. For a brief moment, he forgot why he was there. A grin began to break free until he suddenly remembered the car. He immediately went on the offensive. "Terry, I can't believe you think you have a right to the Continental. What the hell would you do with it if you had it? Wait, Brett," she interrupted. "Let's talk about this over a cup of coffee. I just brewed some fresh one." Her pleasant smile and calm demeanor were disarming. What the hell, he thought. She always made the best coffee in town. Why not? He began to relax a little as Terry poured him a cup. He felt pleasant and comfortable being in his own kitchen again. Unable to resist, he watched her from behind as she walked up to the counter and returned the pan to its place. He remembered how smooth and shapely her ass was under her short skirt. A smile appeared on his face as he took his first sip of the hot black nectar. She returned to the table and sat down with her cup of coffee. "So," she said, looking into his eyes, "why do you think that I have no right to the Continental?" So far, the conversation had not gone as he had expected. He was on edge, he was ready for a fight, but there was absolutely no aggression in her voice. He thought they would be yelling at each other by now, but then they never yelled at each other. Even when they decided to divorce, the conversations were civil and tactful, but even then, she never talked about taking his car. Brett studied her expression. She was always difficult to understand, but she seemed ready to negotiate. Maybe she'll listen to reason. Maybe there won't be any fight. He will simply present his case logically. When he's finished, she'll come to the only rational conclusion. The car belongs to him. "Terry, if you remember, I was the one who bought this car. I did all the work on it. Wait a minute," she interrupted again. "The money for this car was taken from our savings. I put as much money into this account as you do. I'd say we split the cost of the car, right?" She was right. They both put the same amount of money into a savings account every month. But still, he did all the work. "And what do you mean, you did all the work?" she continued. "You did most of the physical work, yes, but who spent hour after hour on the computer looking for all the details?" This must mean something. Damn, he thought, another point in her favor. Things really weren't going the way he expected. She wasn't done yet either. "I even sometimes helped you with the car." "Not very often," he interjected, deciding that he had earned 1 point for himself. "Maybe not. We both know that I'm not a mechanic, and a lot of this was too difficult for me. I simply did not have the strength to help, but even then I was next to you, providing you with moral support." He had to admit that she really did. "How many times have I massaged your neck and shoulders when you were upset, or kissed your finger when a wrench slipped?" Brett took another sip of his coffee. He couldn't help but smile as his mind wandered to the past. God, life was so fun back then. All they seemed to do was laugh and have a good time together. He missed those days. Who would have thought then that they would end up in divorce court? Brett sighed. Enough reminiscing, he thought. Let's get back to the task at hand. "Terry, come on. You've never even driven this car. A couple of times when I tried to get you behind the wheel, you said it would be like driving a tank and you didn't want to risk scratching it. There's a first time for everything, Brett. Maybe you can ride with me the first time, just to make sure I drive it right." God, he thought, what fucking impudence. Not only does she want to take my car, but she also wants me to teach her how to drive. "I'll tell you what," he objected. "Let me come on weekends and take you for a ride." "Can you do it?" She smiled. "Certainly." "How many times?" "I don't know. As many times as you want, I think. Well, I don't have anything else planned for now." Terry said, indicating that she was thinking about it. "Does this mean that I will get a car?" Brett said a little impulsively. "No, I was just asking." She teased. "Come on, Terry. Damn it. If I had known we were going to fight over her, I would have included her in the separation agreement and let the judge decide. I just thought it was an inevitable conclusion that I would keep the car. I never thought you needed her. Doesn't it bring back bad memories?" "Bad memories?" she asked, looking a little puzzled. "Which?" "Well, we messed around a lot in this car. Remember what we called the back seat? You mean the one I looked for 3 months before I found one that wasn't torn or worn out?" Damn, he thought. She's scoring points left and right. "Yes, that's the same," he admitted. "Of course I remember. By that time, she was already working for you. We went to the lake. You said you wanted to show off how much space there is in the back. And there was too much space," she giggled. "Damn, we had sex in almost every position you can imagine, but it's definitely not a bad memory. What makes you think that?" "Well, in light of the way you treat me now, I just thought you probably wished none of this had ever happened. Is this what you feel? Do you wish this had never happened?" Brett was surprised. He thought he detected a little sadness in her voice. She certainly wasn't sad a few months ago when they were discussing divorce. She spoke as if she couldn't wait to get rid of him. No, honestly, those were some of the happiest days of my life, but then I don't understand, Brett. Why these were happy memories for you and not for me? She asked. Well, I don't know. I guess probably because I know that you treat me differently. Differently than I treat you, I mean. It's clear. Maybe we should talk about this before the divorce is final. What do you feel about me? Brett really didn't want to go into detail. He was confused. He didn't want to admit that. He still loved her, especially since he knew that she no longer loved him back. Come on, Terry. I came to talk about the car. Let's leave it at that. Damn. She cursed to herself. He could be so disappointing sometimes. Okay, Terry said, standing up to pour herself another cup of coffee. It's in my garage. You know what they say about possession being 9/10 of the law? She chuckled. Damn it, Terry. You agreed to keep it here until I find a place to store it. You know very well that I can't just leave it in the parking lot of my apartment building. He was starting to get angry. She didn't want this. I know. She backed down. I didn't mean it. Just... What? Brett was now upset. Just what, Terry? I want to know what you meant about my bad memories. Do you think I hate you? Brett sighed slightly. It's not like he'll avoid this conversation. I don't know. Maybe you don't hate me, but you made it clear that you don't love me anymore. So it's only logical that you might think about these memories with regret. That's all. Well, I don't regret them. I don't regret anything at all that we were together. Should she say this? She was trying to lure him out. She had to find out his true feelings, but for that to happen, it looked like she would have to confess first. She decided to go ahead and say it. I don't hate you. The only thing I regret is breaking up. Brett couldn't believe his ears. Did she just say she regrets the breakup? What the hell? She was the one who said that they had grown apart, that they no longer had anything in common. Terry, it was you who said that it would be better if we divorced and went our separate ways, remember? Yes, I remember. But I don't remember you disagreeing with me. Well, I don't know, we just didn't seem like that loving couple anymore. I know. We were both guilty of doing what so many others do. After a while, we began to take each other for granted. Yes, that's probably true, but it wasn't just that, Terry. We hardly made love anymore. Do you remember what we were like at the very beginning? God, we couldn't keep our hands off each other, especially when we were working on Continental. Damn, we had so much fun working on it together. He smiled again, and this time, he had to fight back the tears in his eyes as a tsunami of beautiful memories flooded his mind. I have to agree, Terry replied. We were a real team. Do you remember the first time we washed it? Brett grinned. Yes, but as far as I remember, we didn't have time to wash almost the entire car. We were too busy hosing each other down. Yeah, his soon-to-be ex confirmed, giggling to herself. I don't think I've laughed so hard since I was a little girl. Yes, we had wonderful times, that's for sure. But as soon as we finished with the car, we started to grow apart. It wasn't right after we finished. We still had fun after that. I remember how we drove it to your mother and what her face looked like when she saw it. Yes, she remembered immediately. It was exactly the same Continental that my father had when he died. She actually had tears in her eyes when we took her for a ride, Terry recalled. You're right, Brett admitted. We had a lot of fun with that car, even after it was finished. He paused to remember that time fondly. So what went wrong? Terry asked, interrupting his train of thoughts. You tell me. You seem to have all the answers when you started talking about divorce, he replied sharply. Brett, I was just expressing what we were both thinking at the time. Come on, neither of us really worked on our marriage. It seemed like the reality of life was just constantly getting in our way. It became more interesting for you to study with your friends than with me. Terry, the only reason I spent so much time with them was because you stopped by Audrey's every chance you got. I got tired of sitting at home alone and started dating guys. What did you expect? I'm not sure, she replied. I knew we had problems, but I didn't know what to do. I started going to Audrey constantly so as not to think that our marriage was in danger. This was my refuge. It seemed to me that you were losing interest in me, as well as in marriage. I always thought it was because you stopped loving me. We began to make love less and less often, and when we did, we no longer felt the same passion. Terry thought about her words. Yes, I really remember that making love did not give me such delight as at the beginning. I don't know exactly why, but I know it wasn't because I didn't love you anymore. It just seemed old, routine. Like we were doing it because that's what married people were supposed to do. But neither of us had the same carnal desires for each other that we had in the beginning. We had to find a way to spice it up a little, keep it fresh. So why didn't we do this? Brett asked. Good question. If we had done that, we might not be here now. A month away from ending our marriage. There was silence in the air as they both sipped their coffee. Brett was deep in thought. He wondered what was the matter. She initially told him she wanted to talk to him about not taking the Continental away from her, but mostly they talked about their marriage. He began to think that she didn't need the car at all, that it was just an excuse to drag him there. Terry thought about it too, but not about the car. She needed to know if they were doing the right thing by getting a divorce. She knew how she felt, but how did her husband feel about it? Does he want to go for divorce? Does he still love her? She decided the only way to find out was to ask. Brett, do you still love me? Come on, Terry, we've been through all this before. No, they didn't. We talked about how our lives are going in different directions. We talked about our different interests. We talked about how to live life without each other. Hell, we talked about everything except how we still feel about each other. Before the divorce happens, I need to know, do you still love me? After deciding to divorce, Brett spent many nights sitting in his apartment, grieving for his lost love. In just a few years, she and Terry had gone from being a loving married couple to two people living separate lives in the same house. They rarely quarreled, but there was no spark left. One evening, Terry started talking about divorce. She said she thought it was time for them both to move on with their lives. He agreed then, but has since realized that he made a terrible mistake. He missed her like hell. He still loved her, but it was too late. The divorce was soon to become final. She already had a few dates that he knew about, maybe more. She had already moved on. So what should he do? Embarrass himself by admitting that he still loves her? Would he really put himself down to please her? Was this really the price he had to pay to get his car? Damn it, he was always honest with her before the divorce. Should he be less honest with her now? Terry, I sometimes think that, well, maybe we're making a mistake, but I know how you feel, so... Damn it, Brett, stop telling me how I feel. It's obvious from our conversation that you have no idea how I feel, she stated categorically. Oh, really? Okay, then. How do you feel about... I love you? These words almost took his breath away. For the first time in a long time, his heart seemed to skip a beat. Do you love me? He repeated with a smile. Yes, Brett, I still love you. But you're dating. People say you're moving on. Who? What people? Are you spying on me? No, of course not, but... Well, people. People we both know. Friends. You know. They told me that you were dating, that you were already looking for someone new. They advised me to do the same. Terry sighed in disappointment at their friends. Why do people always need to interfere in the affairs of others? Why did she have to run to him with everything she did? I dated a little. Yes, very little. I went on 3 dates with 3 different guys. She saw the question on his face that she knew he wouldn't ask, but that needed to be asked. No, Brett, I didn't sleep with any of them. I won't say that I wasn't tempted because I was. I'm sure I don't need to tell you that 5 months is a long time. And to tell you the truth, before every date I thought there was a good chance I would bring them home, but... She took another sip of coffee and thought. She wanted to word her next statement so that it meant something, so that he would know she was sincere. But by the end of each date, I no longer had the desire to have sex with any of them. In fact, after the 3rd date, I realized that there was only one man I wanted in my bed. She looked into his eyes. It's you, Brett. You are the only man I want In my bed. Brett found it hard to believe his ears. He fantasized about them getting back together, but he didn't really think it would ever happen. He was sure that he had lost her forever. And then a thought struck him. Does she really mean that she wants to stay married? Or is she offering him a friends with benefits situation? He needed to clear things up. Are you saying that you don't want to go through with the divorce? A wide smile spread across her face. I think we should sleep and talk about this in the morning. What do you think? She was right about one thing. 5 months is a long time. He still wasn't sure what she was suggesting. All he knew for sure was that she was offering him sex, a chance to make love to her again, and he wasn't about to turn it down. Brett followed his wife into the bedroom. Yes, she was still his wife, at least for a little while longer. He was going to make love to her as he would to his wife. As they approached the bed, he turned and looked into her eyes. There was such a desire in them that he had not seen for a long time. Together they brought their lips closer and kissed. These were not the excited, lustful kisses they shared before marriage, but the tender, loving kisses of the days when their love was at its peak. Slowly, Terry unbuttoned his shirt, and in a few moments, he was naked. Brett climbed into bed and watched as the love of his life performed a seductive striptease in his honor. When he saw that she was wearing the bra and panties that he bought for her for a special occasion, he realized that all the talk about the car was just a way to lure him there, to seduce him. He felt like the first time they made love, he was beside himself with desire. As soon as she lay down next to him, he rolled over and hugged her. He held her close, kissing, caressing, and biting her face, neck, and ears with his lips. He felt her body respond to his gentle touches. Her flesh seemed to come alive with passion. It was so long ago, not just the 5 months since their breakup, but the several years leading up to it. How could they let their love fade so much? That night, they both slept more soundly than they had at any time since the word divorce had first been uttered. Brett heard the joyful singing of a bird outside his bedroom window. He opened his eyes towards the morning sun. After briefly looking at the white ceiling, he realized that he was in his own house. This was not a dream, he thought. This actually happened. He looked around and saw his wife looking at him. A wide smile adorned her beautiful face. "Good morning, handsome," she whispered. "Good morning, beauty," he replied with the same wide smile. She pressed herself against him as he pulled her closer to him. "We will share the Continental," he said. "What?" Her heart suddenly sank. Is he still thinking about divorcing her? "Yes, I will teach you to drive a car, and you can drive it sometimes, and I will drive it sometimes." He looked back and saw the frightened expression on her face. He kissed her reassuringly. "I will teach you how to drive it on one condition. You will never, ever mention the word divorce again. Not now or ever again." He felt the tension in her body disappear. "You got it, big boy," she promised. "Okay, first thing tomorrow I'll call the lawyer and tell him that everything is canceled." That Sunday, they had enough time after making love to pick up his clothes. That evening, they both renewed their vows. They held hands, looked into each other's eyes, and swore loyalty, love, honor, and respect. They vowed to never take each other for granted again, and to work on their marriage every day. They both knew how close they had come to losing what was most precious to them, and they were determined to never let that happen again. On Monday, Terry was going to lunch with her best friend Audrey. Audrey was glad to see a smile on her friend's face for the first time in months. "Judging by the smile, your little trick with the car worked," she asked joyfully. "Like a talisman," Terry answered, sitting down in a chair. "What did he say?" "That he loves me," she answered. "Today he will call the lawyer and stop the divorce." "Oh, Terry, that's wonderful." "Audrey, I've tried and tried to understand how we even got to the point of divorce, but I just don't understand. I think we're just tired of each other. Maybe we needed this to wake up. You know what they say? What you have, you don't keep. When you lose, you cry." "I'm glad you two figured it out before you lost it." "Yes, me too," Terry answered with relief. I don't understand why you used the car. Why didn't you just call and tell him you wanted to talk about the divorce? Because I wasn't sure of his feelings. I didn't know if he still loved me or not. If I called and said I wanted to discuss divorce, he might just brush me off, and I wanted to talk to him in person. I knew the best way to make sure he would come was to threaten him with keeping the car. Well, I couldn't be happier for you, Terry. Thank you, Audrey. But tell me, if it didn't work out, if Brett said he wanted to continue with the divorce, would you keep the car? Are you kidding? I could never take this car away from him. It's his child. I could never hurt the person I love like that, even if he didn't love me back. Brett and Terry fulfilled their vow. They worked on their marriage every day. They organized a date night, not just once a month, but whenever they felt like it. Sometimes it was dinner and dancing or a show, sometimes it was theater, and sometimes they just parked by the lake and made out in the back seat of the Continental. They also experimented in the bedroom. They enjoyed sex, but it was different from making love. They did that too. 3 years after their reconciliation, Brett's mother died. Both he and Terry took charge of all the funeral arrangements, and she never left his side throughout the entire ordeal. A couple of weeks after the funeral, they were cleaning up her house to sell it. Terry was going through the papers, receipts, and old documents his mother had kept over the years, while Brett was boxing up family heirlooms. "Brett," she called from the bedroom, "please get me a registration card from the Continental." "Registration card? Why?" "I just want to check something," she replied. A couple of minutes later, Brett handed the Continental registration card to his wife. "Honey, you know how you always said that this car is similar to the one your father had?" "Yes," he answered, still a little embarrassed. "Well, you're wrong. She doesn't look like it," she said, holding up the registration number to another piece of paper. "This is the same one. Is it true?" he asked about what he thought his wife had just said. "Listen, honey, your mother kept the registration documents for your father's car all these years. They are identical." Brett took both papers from her hands and compared them side by side. She was right. The car numbers were the same. His knees became a little weak, and he had to sit on the bed next to his wife. "You once told me that there's something about the Continental that makes you want her. I always thought it was just because it reminded you of your dad's car. But it was more than that, honey. I really think it was your father who brought you to that car. This was his way of reconnecting with you." On the way back to Illinois, they stopped at a cemetery. Remnants of flowers were still scattered across his mother's freshly dug burial site. Nearby was the old but well-kept grave of his father. Brett hugged his loving wife and spoke in awe. "Look, Dad," he said, nodding toward the Continental parked just a couple of steps away. "I remember how much you loved that car, and I promised to take good care of it. I hope you know how much happiness and joy she brought to Terry and me." He stopped to wipe a tear from his eye. "Take care of your mother. She loved you and honored your memory until the day you were reunited." He and Terry stood facing each other. She wrapped her arms around him, laid her head on his chest, and hugged him. "I love you so much, Brett." "I love you too, darling," he said, gently resting his cheek on the top of her head. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.